Hello, my name is Ken Small and I'm an architect in Las Vegas, Nevada. In 20 plus years that I've been practicing architecture in Las Vegas, we've done a lot of tenant improvements. And so I've done a couple different videos looking at tenant improvements different ways from a preliminary standpoint. In this video we're going to talk about moving into an existing space that already has a few offices or walls or is subdivided for the use of the previous tenant, and how to fit yourself into that in the most convenient way. We'll talk a little bit about timelines and things like that. So what I'll begin with is that most people who've hired us to do these kind of projects, they've already signed a lease, they've already got a space, and hopefully we have a drawing of what's existing there. But if we don't, we usually go out, measure the existing conditions. Possibly we could get some information from the building department, although often not. And then we ask the client for what their needs are. So one way to determine what your needs are is to just do an inventory of what you have now and scale it up. So if you have 8 offices and you've leased a space that's twice as big, maybe you want 16 offices or something like that. Another way to do it is to give us a list of what it all is that you need. So you need a room for reception area, and how many seats will be in the reception area, how many are required there, what else is occurring in the reception area. Will there be a place for children? Will there be a place for sick patients? If you're doing some other kind of thing besides a medical office, then you may have other requirements for the waiting area, or you may have separate waiting areas for multiple parties. Say you're have an adversarial process like a lawyer's office, or you're a veterinarian, you want one waiting area for cats and one for dogs, something like that. So give us the information specifically of what your needs are, and then a list of what the items are that go into each room. Another possibility is to just tell us how big each room is. So if you have existing offices and say each of your mid-level executive offices is 10 by 12, then you can just tell us that you need a dozen 10 by 12 offices and one CEO's office that's twice that size, or whatever size you need. The other way to handle it from an office standpoint is to tell us what the components are in the office. So I need a desk that's 3 by 5, I need a return, I need a chair for the person who offices in that room, and 2 side chairs, and a file cabinet, or whatever it is you need. So you can give us the list that way. Then if you have not already leased your space, a good option is to take all the laundry list of all the rooms and all the sizes and everything and add it all up and get a total, and that is not the amount of space that you need. That is, you should add at least 15% to that for corridors and other things, and then also think about restrooms if they're within your space. Of course, if they're outside your space, if you're renting in an office building where the restrooms are down the corridor, then you don't need that. But all the have-to-have spaces that you may not really want as a part of your business plan, but you have to have, should be included in that tally before you add the 15%. Then once we have the list of all the spaces that you need, the next thing that we would do is try to overlay that with the existing floor plan and figure out if there's some configuration where some cost savings can be attained by saving existing walls. Now, what is cost savings when you're thinking about this is very important, because if you actually go in and bulldoze out all the existing walls, then you're probably going to have better utilization over time. So if you're going to be in the space for 10 or 15 years, you're going to save some money by demolishing everything. But if first cost is your issue, then trying to save as many rooms as possible and not really get maximum utilization is probably the answer for you. So there is no fixed answer in which is the best way. It's all part of your business plan and how things work, and honestly a matter of what was left behind and what your needs are. So once we've reached that point, we're going to start drawing sketches, and I'm just going to show you a couple sketches here. So this is what a sketch looks like. Pretty scribbly. Here's another one, another option for the same thing. This happens to be a medical office, but it could be anything. Well, after we get through this stage of the real scribbly, then we tend to draw a little bit tighter lines, a little bit more neatly, a little bit more precisely, but you're still dealing with the general layout issues. So my office is here, exam room is there. How many people will be sitting at the front desk or in a break area or something like that, you're dealing with at this stage. And so while we go through these stages, you get scribbly again. We start moving things around, pushing them to and fro, because it's all just lines on paper. That's cheap to do. When you finally get to the point where you say, that's what I want, you'll probably have something about like this. So this shows some circles on it that are required for persons with disabilities access. It shows how many seats in the waiting area. It shows how many people will fit in some offices. And in this case, this is medical, although you might not be doing medical. It shows how many exam rooms will be there. So the next step in the process is, after you've approved the preliminary plan and signed off on it, you do this, which is a preliminary hardline drawing. So again, this is just an example, and by accident it turns out to be medical, but this could be for anything like a restaurant. And so this is a measurable drawing, and we actually have dimensions on it. So it's going to say this room is 8 by 10, or this room is 3 feet 6 inches by, this closet is 3 foot 6 inches by 5 foot 8 inches. So you get fairly accurate dimensions. Things could still move by some inches after that. But when you have a drawing like this, you know what will fit in the space. You're not going to be adjusting very much, and in most cases, not at all. So once we have this drawing, you can see right here we have a signature block on there. We ask the client to approve and commit to that before sending it on to engineering. So once you have your architectural floor plan done, you still have to do a reflected ceiling plan that shows your lighting, a power plan that shows where all your electrical outlets are going to be. You may need enlargements for things like restrooms or your break area cabinets or what have you that can still be done that are architectural work. But at that point, we're going to begin involving mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers or engineering drawings, depending on who produces them. The engineers need a commitment on where the walls go before they can install the electrical in them. So it's developed the same way the contractor builds out on the job site. First the walls go in, and then the electrician comes. So the staff that does the electrical engineering, if you have an existing tenant improvement, will probably go out and do an as-built drawing of what's out there, where the power is, where the lighting is, and what have you, and then you'll decide what to keep and what to get rid of or what to move. And then electrical drawings have to be done. They have to calculate the amount of power in the panel, make sure that there's enough power, show demolished outlets and demolished switches and demolished lights and new. If you're replacing light fixtures, selection has to be done for that. And then after that whole process is done, then it has to be coordinated with the mechanical drawings, which are the same thing, same process. Go out and see what's there, decide what to move, what to change. Of course, since your air conditioning system requires power, it has to be coordinated with the power coming from the electric panel and the capacity that's going into the suite. Very infrequently is there insufficient power in a suite that a tenant has previously occupied. More often than not, there's sufficient power capacity, but you can run into this in very old buildings where computerization wasn't anticipated, that there's a little tiny panel and they figured that everybody was just working by hand, and now we bring in modern computers and copiers and things like that, and the power is insufficient. So it's important to look at these things and determine that there is enough before signing a lease. Once you have that, then the last thing usually is the plumbing, and we try to look at or guess what's existing in the plumbing because it's all hidden in the walls, and give a best guess drawing of the existing conditions and what modifications have to be made to that to be able to file for permitting. Often the plumber finds out that whatever's buried underneath your slab is not what we assumed, because nobody has x-ray vision, and even if you're working off an existing set of construction documents, a lot of times the plumber didn't build according to the architect's best guess or the engineer's best guess on the first go-around when the tenant improvement was originally built out. And also you have no way of knowing if they're the second, third, or fourth tenant and you're the fifth, so there could be a lot of unforeseen conditions with regard to plumbing. Those are the drawings that are required to be able to file for a building permit. You also need interior design in most cases. Some people would prefer to self-perform that, but if not, we have interior design in-house in our firm, and concurrently with that timeline, we help you make your interior design selections. At several points in this process, you might want to consider construction cost estimating. And so often we'll look to a contractor for a preliminary opinion for construction cost when we have that yellow paper sketch that I showed you earlier, and then you can tell if you're in the ballpark or not for affordability. Once we've drawn all the construction documents that I talked about already, the architecture, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and given the contractor some idea of the interior finish selection that you're going to make, then that information will be all handed back to the owner together with the contractor's preliminary estimate, and we ask you to give a final approval before going down to the building department to go through the plan check process. How long does all that take? Our part for that process as architects, not necessarily our firm SSA Architecture, but architectural generally takes about a month to 2 months after the client has made up their mind. How long it takes you as a client to make up your mind is your guess. I really can't answer that question. But that's architectural construction documents with mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. It would not include any structural engineering, because normally in a tenant improvement there is no structural engineering, and including interior design or not does not normally affect your timeline, because the ID can be done concurrently with creating the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing drawings. So when you signed off on all that and we file it with the building department, that's the first time your contractor has a chance to give you a hard bid. So we give the contractor the construction documents and ask him for his bid to build the project, or her, and we may ask several general contractors to give pricing so that you have competitive bidding, or you may choose to negotiate with just one. But while the plans are in plan check at the building department, you'll have to negotiate or bid a price from your general contractor based on the information that's on those drawings, and try to lock in his contract so that he can proceed immediately when the plans come out of plan check. If we're doing expedited plan process through unincorporated Clark County or through the city of North Las Vegas, the plans may come out of plan check faster than the general contractor can bid, but there's still a big time savings in doing the expedited process, because most general contractors can bid in 2 weeks, or if they're negotiating, they can negotiate in 1 week, having seen the preliminaries. So if your plans are in plan check, they could conceivably be, this is 2019 and the economy is pretty good, so they could be in plan check in some jurisdictions up to 2 months. And so that's a very, very long time. We're one of 3 architects that are qualified to do the permit now process in unincorporated Clark County, which should bring it down to 1 or 2 business days. Add to that the time it takes to do the printing and all that, but maybe definitely less than a week to get through the process of the paper shuffle at unincorporated Clark County Building Department, and then your contractor could start construction immediately after that. In the city of North Las Vegas, their expedited process, which has another name, takes them about a week, and you could add 1 or 2 days on either end of that to get the permit. So a day for printing before it goes down, and a day for the contractor to get whatever he needs together to go down and actually pull the permit after it clears plan check on either end of the expedited process for the city of North Las Vegas. You should watch our videos on those topics, because that's a protracted discussion and not really other than in a general way discussed here. The important parts are come up with a list of what it is you need, some fairly definitive decisions. If there are driving factors, then you can just talk about what those are with a list of your criteria. And so, you know, if you wanted to be really impressive space, then say that. If everything has to be just absolutely cheap as possible, tell us that. But be upfront and don't fool yourself with what it is you want and what it is you have to have. That's the important part. And if you can't give us a list, if you can't do any of this stuff, don't worry about it. None of this is mandatory. This is just a frequently asked question of how do we do this? How do we expedite it? What do we do to try to help it along? If you don't, we can go in and inventory your existing space, or ask you questions about what your needs are and make our own list to determine how this can happen. That's all up to you, and a lot of people opt for that, so those are good choices also. But if you want to know the best way to move it along, then this is a good option. And from one time to another, depending on conditions, depending on what you're trying to do, is it a restaurant, is it medical, is it general office, what is it? Things are always going to be different from one job to the next. But this gives you a general idea of what's involved in the process. One final question, talking about the other videos that you can look at, that will be linked here. How long will it take? Most companies take about a month to make up their mind. I've had some come in and have their mind made up and short circuit that or quick circuit that to a week or a few days, but you have to look at your internal procedures and decide how long it really takes you, because it could take you months. If you're a large organization and a lot of hands involved in it, it could take you forever. And on the next step, how long does it take to get through the building department has already been mentioned, so 6 weeks to 2 months, depending what building department, size of project, technical difficulty. And then how long does it take to construct? Minimum construction time we're seeing in the valley for tenant improvements right now of any consequence at all, just a small office, is absolute bottom is 2 months. And that's if you're not doing much over painting and carpeting and just moving a few walls. But if it's a normal small tenant improvement, 90 days, a little bit larger tenant improvement, 120 days. And yes, complicated tenant improvements with a lot of infrastructure like restaurants and what have you that are large, over 120 days. If you're in a casino, over 120 days. If you're in a mall, possibly over 120 days as a result of that, because of the inefficiencies of being able to come and go easily. They may only let you work certain hours depending on where you're going in and things like that. But remember this in the whole process. The soonest you make each decision, the more likely that you're going to get done on time and on budget. So make each decision once and only once, and don't change your mind as you're going through the process. It's really, really expensive to change your mind during the construction process. It throws out the timeline for the contractor. He or she may be completely incapable of doing what it is you ask, depending on what time in the construction process they're in. They may tell you to go pull another permit after you got a certificate of occupancy for what you're doing to do whatever change you want, because it's that far out of the sequence of procedures that they need to do to stay anywhere near on process, on schedule. So in our process, preliminary list, which is what we call a design program as architects, and then the preliminary sketch, construction documents, permitting, and then construction process. Those are the primary steps with, as I said, interior design overlaying that in a critical path. So watch our other videos talking about critical path scheduling, construction cost estimating versus bidding, and some other there's a whole series of good videos here, more than 36 now on different topics that may apply to your project. One final closing statement: this video is about tenant improvements. If you're building a ground up building, yes, some of this applies, none of the timeline information applies, and but the process for doing the initial list of what your needs are and preliminary sketch process does apply. So we have other videos on that topic, and I'd suggest that you look at them. My name is Ken Small, and I'm an architect in Las Vegas, Nevada with SSA Architecture. Please give us a call, and the initial visit is always free with us, and I have over 20 years experience doing this kind of work, so hopefully we can help you. My telephone number is 702-873-1718. Thanks for watching, and please like the video down below.